American society worships wars and wartime leaders. As a result, most Americans do not know that many wartime leaders were incompetent, while others sacrificed thousands of American lives to advance their career. There are several examples from World War II, like the mindless attack through the mountains up the Italian peninsula. More Americans were killed liberating Italy than France. This pointless effort also killed great numbers of Italian civilians and destroyed entire towns. One can debate the need for any major Allied military operations in the Mediterranean during World War II. Most of the German army was fighting the Soviets, while the remainder awaited an Allied invasion from England into France. This massive invasion required years to build up American men and material in England. Most U.S. Army generals thought a force could be ready to invade by 1943. For unclear reasons, American President Franklin Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill decided to invade neutral French North Africa. This became known as Operation Torch, which devoured American resources for months. A short documentary about this unneeded sideshow is linked below, which argues the big desert battles in Tunisia and Libya could have been skipped. The Allies should have gone for the throat and invaded Sicily to cut off access supplies to Africa. The Allies invaded Sicily 5 months after Operation Torch, after wasting huge resources fighting in Africa, and after the Germans had doubled the size of combat forces defending Sicily. Securing Sicily put the entire Mediterranean firmly in control of the Allies, and it was hoped this would lead to political unrest in Italy. This did not occur immediately, but Italian forces and political leaders had lost the will to fight. The Allies made 3 landings on southern mainland Italy, as Germany sent major reinforcements to halt this advance. On July 25, 1943, Italian leader Benito Mussolini was arrested and stripped of all his powers by the king, while Marshal Badoglio formed a new government that sought to end the war. The Italian surrender was signed on July 3rd, but was not announced until the 8th in hopes that the invading Allied forces could prevent the Germans from taking over Italy. This failed as most Italian military units were quickly disarmed by the Germans, while others continued to fight alongside them. The Germans lacked forces to control armed rebellions on the islands of Sardinia and Corsica, and feared entrapment by Allied sea power after the loss of support from the Italian Navy. They fled to mainland Italy by the end of September 1943, giving the Allies access to key air bases. The Allies also captured the massive Italian air base complex at Foggia in southwestern Italy. This was a great victory for the Allies. Once Allied air power was fully established at Foggia, Corsica, and Sardinia, they would have air superiority throughout Italy and southern France. This would allow the Allies to conduct major amphibious landings in the lightly defended south of France or northern Italy to trap over 300,000 soldiers in southern Italy. German forces constructed fortified defenses in the mountains of southern Italy, and the Allied advance up the boot of Italy was halted. Attacking these fortified positions was unnecessary. The Allies had complete naval superiority in the Mediterranean and air superiority over most of Italy, so could soon bypass these Germans by invading southern France or northern Italy. Allied forces in southern Italy could take up defensive positions and keep the Germans bleeding with air and artillery strikes. For unknown reasons, the Allies insanely attacked into the fortified mountains of Italy for months. This was done in a series of major offensives where the Allies suffered twice more casualties than the Germans and achieved little. American commander Lieutenant General Mark Clark devised dangerous attacks to penetrate German defenses that led to major disasters. In Operation Shingle, 2 Allied divisions landed on the beaches of Anzio to outflank the Germans. This was executed well and surprised the Germans, but the Allies dug in around the beachhead rather than seizing the undefended mountains nearby. The Germans deployed nearby reserve forces to this high ground and blasted and attacked the Allied forces on the beaches below. To support this landing, the U.S. Army's 36th Infantry Division was ordered to cross the Gari River, 50 miles to the south. 2 regiments with 4,000 men made it across using boats and were badly shot up. They retreated across the river, leaving 2,100 men behind who were killed or captured. Naval gunfire repelled German attacks at Anzio and allowed more troops to land, who fought to break out. 2 U.S. Army Ranger battalions infiltrated German positions at night to capture the key town of Cisterna. They were detected outside the town, encircled, and attacked. No Rangers survived, as 311 were killed and 450 captured. The Allies eventually prevailed, but the Germans managed to withdraw and establish yet another fortified line of defense. The high point of stupidity in the Italian campaign was the Battle of Monte Cassino. This was a steep rocky mountain with a historic Catholic abbey atop. German paratroopers were drug in around its base and proved impossible for the repeated Allied infantry assaults to dislodge. The Germans had not occupied the fortress-like abbey because of its historical and religious importance, and Allied artillery and bombers had not attacked this hilltop filled with civilians. After weeks of failure, frustrated Allied commanders accused the Germans of using the abbey for observation posts and unleashed hell. On the morning of February 15, 1944, 229 American heavy bombers dropped 1,150 tons of high explosive and incendiary bombs on the abbey, reducing Monte Cassino to a smoking mass of rubble. Between bomb runs, the heavy artillery pounded the mountaintop. Nearly all the 250 civilians and monks were killed, and the Vatican was furious. The Germans moved into the ruins of the abbey and turned it into a fortress, which became a serious problem for the attacking Allied forces. After 123 days of bloody attacks, the Allies finally drove out the Germans from the rubble after suffering 55,000 casualties, compared to fewer than 20,000 for the Germans. Italy had switched sides, and the Catholic Pope attempted to have Rome placed off-limits to strategic bombing to spare lives and historic buildings. He failed, so on July 19, 1943, 500 American heavy bombers dropped 1,168 tons of bombs on Rome. The entire working-class district of San Lorenzo was destroyed, and 3,000 civilians killed. 60,000 tons of bombs were dropped on Rome in the 78 days before Rome was captured by the Allies, and an estimated 70,000 Italian civilians were killed or wounded in Rome. The only rationale offered for these bloody, dangerous attacks was to inflict casualties on the Germans. But most of this could have been done with artillery and tactical bombing, without sending infantry as targets or bombing Italian cities. Since the Allies had complete naval superiority in the Mediterranean and air superiority over Italy, a rational commander would have bypassed German defenses and landed troops on the coast of northern Italy. By January 1944, the U.S. Army Air Force had hundreds of aircraft based in Corsica, who began attacking German supply trains and trucks, so the air power was there to cover an amphibious landing in the north. Instead, the Allies landed at Anzio. This was risky because marshes limited mobility, and large German reserve forces were nearby. If that amphibious force had landed on the beaches of Leghorn in northern Italy and advanced towards Florence, the Germans could have been trapped. Germany had few combat units in the region, and those in southern France had already been thinned out to reinforce northern France. The Germans would be forced to rush up divisions from the south, but that would take weeks as they were pummeled by Allied air power prowling the roads. Allied probing attacks might be executed in the south, possibly causing a panic flight northward as the Germans attempted to break out of this entrapment. The landing force may lack the manpower to trap the Germans, but merely the threat would force the Germans to abandon southern Italy and Rome. On the other hand, this landing may have disrupted preparations for Operation Dragoon, the invasion of southern France. But an amphibious landing in northern Italy was just an option. For unknown reasons, the Allies did not choose either of these two obvious options. 1. Halting bloody attacks in southern Italy and diverting resources to support the planned invasion of southern France. 2. Land divisions in northern Italy to shut down German supply routes to the south. The mindless effort to attack through the mountains up the Italian peninsula is one of the great mysteries of World War II, which puzzled the Germans as well. When the Allies eventually pushed up to northern Italy, they encountered the impassable Alps. So what was the point? U.S. Army had bypassed Japanese strongpoints in the Pacific with island hopping. So why did U.S. Army generals in Italy conduct repeated assaults into German fortifications in Italy for over a year, rather than hopping past them? The Allies suffered 330,000 casualties fighting on mainland Italy, to include 119,000 American and 90,000 British. Over 8,000 aircraft were lost and 3,377 armored vehicles destroyed. This was a disaster. Holding the line in southern Italy would have resulted in a few thousand casualties from German artillery, patrols, and snipers, but was a far better option than attacking German fortifications again, and again. Tens of thousands of American GIs were slaughtered in this mad effort that was so chaotic, 3,095 GIs went missing in action. All that remains are 7,858 crosses for GIs buried near Anzio.